Hello, and welcome to Pathways to Healing, the Perfect Step podcast. We are your hosts, Cody Norman
and Logan Frye, paralysis recovery specialist at the Perfect Step, also known as TPS.
We are not doctors and are not prescribing anything, as this podcast is for informational purposes and should not be considered legal advice.
We are, however, sharing knowledge and experience that we have gained from working for years with clients in the paralysis community.
The guests on this podcast will include either experts in their respective fields or individuals sharing their unique experiences with paralysis.
Suggestions and advice that we share may affect each person differently, as not one injury or diagnosis is the exact same.
We are hopeful that the outreach of this podcast will allow us to give help and guidance for individuals suffering from paralysis.
We understand that this spread of knowledge is important and takes an entire community coming together.
Because of this, we would like to take a moment to thank our sponsors who have made this possible. Welcome back to part 2 of Pathways to Healing, where your host Logan and I do an episode where we talk about the field of paralysis, where we believe the field is going, and the community. Thanks for coming on, Logan.
Thanks for having me, Cody. Thanks for being on here too, man. How's your morning going so far?
Going great so far. How about yours?
It's going good. Can't complain, man. Can't complain. I'm glad that we're here today.
Just another day. Lucky to be here, right?
Yeah.
Why don't you start off this podcast on talking about secondary complications associated with paralysis and how you think the Perfect Step helps with those and ways that you think other communities can get better at helping individuals who have the secondary complications.
Absolutely. Yeah. As far as secondary complications go, I feel like our clients deal with those things a lot. And I think secondary complications are something that a lot of people don't recognize outside of the disability community as something that people with disabilities deal with on a daily basis. When I think secondary complications, I think of pressure sores, I think of low blood pressure. I think of maybe somebody dealing with a bowel and bladder program, because those are all things that you wouldn't deal with as an able-bodied individual. With somebody that doesn't have paralysis or somebody that doesn't have paralysis, not only in their spinal cord that affects their body and the central nervous system, but they also deal with paralysis in their bladder and in every body part below the level of injury. So that's something that people deal with, not only physically with the voluntary nervous system, but also in the involuntary nervous system aspect as well. I think there's so many different secondary complications that our clients deal with on a daily basis. Like I said,
a few more UTI, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, the
bladder
biggest
infections.
one, bladder
Yeah.
infections.
Yeah.
One that isn't really talked about too common, but changes in anatomy. When somebody's living
Yeah.
life in a chair and they're slouching to one side, you can get a pretty severe curvature of the spine or scoliosis or abnormalities of the anatomy of the body that are going to cause pain or nerve pain and other secondary complications, things like that I just don't think people really think of too commonly, like you said, especially when they're not in the paralysis community.
Yeah, you say pain, I think of neuropathic pain right away, nerve pain, and that comes as like ghost pain for a lot of our clients. And typically, we've seen a lot of clients that nerve pain sometimes gets worse before it gets better. Some clients, it gets better. It depends on the person, on the individual for sure. But I think that our program does such a good job in dealing with secondary complications because exercise is a form of medicine. And we believe that with circulation aspects and with being able to use that exercise, like our exercise-based therapy, our load bearing, that we do to decrease bone density or to decrease secondary complications like bone density as well, right? Maintaining, helping improve bone density. That's also a secondary complication. Also dealing with the lack of nervous system control, right? Or lack of being able to control somebody's spasms. That's a secondary complication in itself. And so PNAR, and we talked about PNAR in our part 1, PNAR deals a lot with being able to organize and activate the nervous system. So that's something in itself. But speaking of, I guess, physical secondary complications like UTIs, bladder infections, pressure sores, maybe even
Osteoporosis,
low
HO.
bone density, all those types of things. I feel like with circulation, with the ability to move your body, with exercise and getting your heart in that state, and also with getting your lungs and respiratory system be able to become stronger from doing certain exercises. I think that our program goes a long way, and that's very much so where it's pointed and directed towards, is trying to help that body and the people to deal with secondary complications, but also to improve those complications over time. And we have seen, in some cases, a dramatic decrease in secondary complications. And some people they've maintained, which is, I still see that as a win in some aspects because they're not getting worse and secondary complications aren't getting worse for them, not getting more pressure sores, UTI and bladder infections aren't getting worse. But instead, maybe sometimes they're staying the same and or getting better, and that's what we want.
Exactly. That's all I think anybody wants.
Mm.
And I think when people think of, oh, it's a recovery center, that, oh, they're just trying to get people to walk again. And that's definitely not what it is, right? We have a very good understanding that, yes, we want to try to help people walk. We want to try to help them regain function. But we also understand that sometimes somebody's body might not be in a position to where that would be the best thing for them. They may come in and they may be dealing with a secondary complication and they just need a little TLC to make them feel a little bit better so that they can go about the rest of their day.
Mm.
And I think when we think of recovery, it is really individualistic to what that individual needs, and it can mean anything from a strenuous exercise based program, or it could be something as, I don't want to say mild, but as modest as just taking them through some passive ranges of motion to loosen up the joints,
Mm.
or to help them get in a standing frame and do some form of load bearing exercise so that they can help with their osteopenia, osteoporosis.
Mm.
All these different things that when we think of recovery, it's not just trying to walk again, right? It's this encompassing blanket that's talking about all these different things, from dealing with secondary complications to trying to get you to be able to regain function, to being able to help you go about independent living, or creating the ability for you to be more independent in your own lifestyle, or all these different things, that it's really this, like I said, encompassing blanket.
Yeah, I think they all come together as well. Yeah, I think some coincide with others. And I think with increase of circulation, there can be a decrease in pressure sores, right? Or an increase of being able to make pressure changes and being able to, pressure adjustments in your chair and learn to get better at that. All those things over time help to decrease secondary complications, as well as obviously we know, like, one of the best things that Adam Fritz just talked about in episode 2 was Adam Fritz talked about increasing your water intake to help to decrease UTIs. And that just, it sounds a lot easier than what it is, especially as a lot of our clients dealing with having to cath, right? And also the more you cath, sometimes the more UTIs and bladder infections can come up too. But like I said, it sounds so much easier than what it is, and we have no idea what that's like. But the best that we can do is hopefully try to spread some scientific knowledge and onto our clients, and maybe allow them to realize a lot of people that we've seen before, what has worked for them possibly could work for some of these newer clients that are coming into the building as well.
And I think it does the majority of the time, if not all the time. They're able to come in, learn something that they didn't know, that they learned from a different client or from one of us, and it helps them almost immediately, whether it's dealing with a secondary complication or helping them transfer or learning about travel or something like that, right? They come in and they're new to the community and they don't really know, because you don't know what you don't know. If nobody's taught you something, how would you know it?
Right.
It's literally as simple as that. A lot of people, I think, if people who aren't surrounded by or encompassed in the process community were to listen to something like this, they would be like, I did kind of learn a lot. And yeah, that would be the hope. I mean, that is the goal of the podcast, but it's also like, if we're talking about something that wasn't taught to you before, then you would have to learn, because like I said, there's just no way to learn it unless it's taught to you or you go out of your way to do it. And a lot of people don't do that until they're forced into this community.
Definitely. And I think sometimes the gray area of that is a lot of people do their own research too, and that's fantastic. I love that people go into the internet, type into Google, do their own research, YouTube. But same time, I hope that a lot of people may take some of those things with a grain of salt, because not just with the disability community, but with in general, going onto the internet and typing up, "Hey, I have these kind of symptoms. What's going on with me?" You know, you're gonna get a plethora of different answers, and some of them might not be even close to what the actual answer is. So ideally, like you said, we want to be an educational resource for a lot of our clients, and but also we don't have every single right answer either.
No.
Right? We're still constantly learning and trying to make ourselves better and educate ourselves more and more as time goes on, and that way we can spread out this information, but also learn from people that we interview, like guests and clients, and co-hosts like yourself. And I'm just trying to learn every single day, and so we can just keep spreading good information.
And there's a lot of good information out there. I think
Yeah.
there's so much in our day and age with all the technological resources that we have that it's almost infinite, that you can literally just keep learning and keep learning and keep learning and keep learning. And
Yeah.
I think this field is great because there is so much that isn't known, but there's so much that also is known, that
Mm.
trying to put those pieces together, it's like a puzzle, and you're just, as a trainer, you're trying to figure out the best thing for your client on any given day and trying to figure out how you're going to help them in whatever facet they may need.
Right.
And it is a just constant learning curve. You're going to have days where you're like, wow, that was a great session. Like, I did everything I wanted. I think they got something out of it. They seemed like they were able to engage the whole time. And then you're going to get other days and you finish the session, you're like, wow, I am crap at my job. Like, and it's very humbling in a lot of experiences, but
Mm.
in a good way, because there's not really a blueprint on what a perfect session looks like, because whenever somebody's body comes in, it's different than the last time. And so
Mhm.
you're just trying to get as close to what you think a perfect session could be as possible every single time. And like I said, a lot of the times you're going to fall short, but
Yeah.
that's a kind of humbling but great part of the job. You get to constantly learn from that.
Yeah.
I won't call it failure, because you're still getting something out of it and the client is still going to get a good workout out of it, but it just might not have been exactly what the specialist wanted in
Mm.
alignment with whatever the goals that they had for that session were.
Yeah, possibly. And I think, like you said, it's not failure, but I think it is adversity in some aspects. But I think the thing that helps a lot with us and with our clients is every time that they come into the building and when they leave, we always tell them, "I hope your body feels better than it did when you first came in."
Mm-hmm.
All right. And that's something that is, I think a lot of clients can coincide with, is when they first come into the building, they might feel a little stiff. All right. And that's, might feel a little stiff, might feel a little tight. They might have a little bit of lack of circulation at that point in time. But even just getting them out of the wheelchair and getting them into a position to where their body is kind of receiving, I guess, not really secondary complications, but their body is proportioning in a way that the wheelchair sits, because now their body's confined to that chair. So being able to get outside of the wheelchair in general and just do that is something that's great within itself. And so we go from there, and that's already something positive, and we can create even more positivity outside of that and on top of that. So that's great.
The Be Perfect Foundation is not just a name, it's a promise. A promise to individuals living with paralysis that they are not alone in their journey. Founded by Hal Hargrave Jr. in 2007, after his own life-altering accident, we are a nonprofit 501c3 organization dedicated to providing direct financial and emotional aid. Inspired by a quote from the movie Friday Night Lights, we believe that being perfect is about doing everything you can, especially for yourself, your family, and your friends. With nearly $10 million raised and a 100% volunteer staff, your support goes directly to those in need. We assist with medical supplies, wheelchairs, home adaptations, and exercise-based therapy programs. Our board of directors receives no salary, ensuring that almost every dollar donated makes a real impact. Visit BePerfectFoundation.org to donate or learn how you can get involved. The Be Perfect Foundation, changing perceptions daily.
You spoke a little bit about advancements in the field as of recently. I know you're very interested in those kinds of things and research, but as far as maybe NeuroLink can go, if you can kind of give us a little bit of an update of where you're at with researching those kinds of things.
Yeah, I think NeuroLink is very interesting. I should probably say first that I'm not an expert in NeuroLink. I have no connection, no affiliation, nothing like that. If anybody from NeuroLink wants to ever come onto the podcast and talk, we'd love to have you guys. I think that would be great. I did listen to a podcast of Andrew Huberman with one of the engineers. Right now, I'm not really sure what his name is. Emma, could we look that up? We'll get you guys the name of the individual who was on the podcast, but it was, I want to say a couple years back now, and he talked for a couple hours on NeuroLink, the company, what they're doing, where they're going, what the kind of pathway to success would look like if they had a perfect blueprint to cure paralysis in a sense.
I think you did there.
Right. And they have just recently, I want to say about a month now, done their first surgery and did their first implant on a patient or somebody who has a spinal cord injury. And this is not an implant that is trying to cure paralysis. It's not trying to help this individual walk again. It has nothing to do with the understanding that I have. Matt McDougall, Dr. Matt McDougall is the individual on the Human Lab podcast who talked a good a bit about it, and that was where I learned, I would say, the majority of it. I've learned some from papers and, hear Elon Musk talk about it every once in a while, but that podcast was probably the best piece of information that I had on the company. And they did their first implant, and it's not, like I said, not to make somebody walk again, not to do anything physical at all, really. And what it was an implant into the brain to allow somebody who was a quadriplegic, so no arm or leg movement, to be able to control a computer interface by just using their brain. So you're looking at the computer screen and you're thinking, okay, I want to right click. Okay, I want to left click. Okay, I want to move the mouse to the top left. I want to move the mouse around. And that's what it does. And so now this individual can look at a computer screen, move around, and just think what he wants the mouse to do, and he can do it. It's limited. He can't use a whole keyboard that I know of, and if he does, it has to like pop up and he has to go from letter to letter. But I think the first thing that he used it for was he was playing like a computer game, and he was able to control this mouse and do all these clicks, and he talked, I want to say it was 2 days after the initial surgery was done, and he like pulled an all-nighter playing this computer game, and he did something like upwards of 20,000 clicks. I think it was like a crazy amount of clicks. Like he was using it, and he was getting good at it. And he talked about his experience, and he said, it was almost like second nature. It wasn't very hard to control. And he talked about him staying up playing the computer game and then waking up the next morning. And he was talking about how it almost gave him a purpose again. Like he had a reason to be excited to wake up. He was able to do something like all on himself. And I think a lot of us take that for granted, right? We're able to still, even people who are in the process community who might not be completely as affected, like you can go on your phone, you can do all these things, but somebody who has that much limitation, just being able to go on a computer, use your phone for yourself, or do those type of little things is so big, right? You think about the future of where that could lead. Okay, he's controlling a computer interface. Okay, let's get him an online job. Give him something, give him a community to be a part of, give him something to do, give him something to feel like they can be a part of a community again. And I think that's just huge. And the way NeuroLink in that podcast, or McDougall described it, was there's a pathway, right? You have to be able to control a computer interface with the implant, and then you want to try to be able to control internal source to create motor function, and then you're having to get really specific with it and control motor function in particular regions of the body with the minuteness of particular muscle groupments or joint movement patterns. So it's very, very advanced, and I don't think that it's not something that I think is right around the corner just because this one surgery worked, but I think it is very hopeful and very interesting to see where it could lead. When I think of a cure to paralysis or something like that, I do think that could be something that could work in the future for sure. Am I saying like I would put all my eggs in that basket? No, absolutely not. I wouldn't do that with any of the type of innovations. And when I think of the cure, I actually don't think of like, oh, it's going to be NeuroLink, or it's going to be this new gene modification, or it's going to be, oh, this other internal implant, or it's going to be, there's going to be some advancement in physical therapy or occupational therapy or whatever it is. I think it's going to be an encompassing group of these different advancements that are going to have to come together to create like a form of melting pot to create that cure, right? We talk about how we're not the cure to paralysis here at the Perfect Step. We understand that. We do help recover though. And that could be, like I said earlier, from recovering from secondary complications or trying to regain function, or just recovering from the paralysis to get the body healthy again. Right? When you go through that initial injury, you lose a lot. You have a lot of atrophy. You get these secondary complications and you don't feel healthy again. Well, that's what we try to do. We try to build an environment where our clients can become healthy. And once they become healthy, there's so much more room to grow because you're not dealing with all the little stuff. You can start to work on your recovery of trying to regain function again.
Right.
And I think the biggest part is when we do talk about a cure to paralysis, we all think and hope that it's coming. Okay, say it's, 10 years down the road, 5 years, 20 years, however many years. We still believe that this place is going to be extremely important because A, if somebody has what they think is the potential cure for paralysis and they need a group of individuals, 10, 20, 100 people to try or do the initial experiment on to get approval, what kind of population are they going to go after for their study? Are they going to go after the population who has all these secondary complications and has these health issues and aren't independent living and all these other things? Or are they going to look for this group of healthy individuals, no secondary complications, living an active lifestyle, have an idea on what it means to try to regain function again, and have been doing that for a particular amount of time? Well, that's the population that we think they're going to want to go after, and that's the population that we want to, be able to provide. And then say that does happen and a cure does happen, well, you're not just going to get the implant and have this gene therapy or whatever and be able to just start walking again and start running and just go run a marathon the next day. It's not a switch.
Yeah.
There's going to be a gradual progression once it happens to regaining function, okay, regaining the ability to move certain limbs, make particular small movements happen. Okay, now we got to get into like a kneeling position. Okay, now we got to stand. Okay, now we start walking, then we start running, then we start jumping and turning and doing all these other movements that are very complex when it comes to not having done it and the body not being used to it again. And I think we have seen that with trying to regain or retrain gait with our clients in here.
Yeah.
It sounds so simple, just walk, right? But when you break it down, it is very, very complex and hard to get individuals to understand the complexities of it and the particular things that they need to be focusing on to have a proper gait, that it gets overlooked. And I think that, like I said, it's not going to be you get this implant or you get this gene therapy and you're cured. You're going to have to go through a recovery process after that. And we think that people who have been training people with paralysis for years and trying to teach them to walk again and move again, what better group would there be than that group who has already been doing it for so many years?
Right. And at what point do you think that this is going to help impact the sensory nervous system positively? Because somebody can maybe gain back control of the central nervous system, but with the lack of sensation still, like you said, in trying to relearn a gait with not having proprioception, which is obviously your ability to know where your body is in space, and without having the ability to have full sensation, to feel your heel strike, or to feel yourself rolling onto the next step, or to feel your knee lock out and you feel a squeeze or a contraction in your quad. Without that ability, how far do you think that this can go?
It's a great question, and I obviously don't have like a straight answer because there's so much unknown when it comes to this.
Of course.
But I think you can get, I'm not going to say all the way there, but you can get decently far, I think, by just using the muscular activation. And we're not really sure, but I think the theory and the hypothesis would be that if you're gaining that central nervous system function and everything with the brain is working, then I think they think and this is all hypothetical.
Yeah.
I think they think that those other components, the proprioception, the sensory feedback, the temperature or thermoregulation, all those things would also come back. That is an unknown, but I think that they think that that's where where it is going. You fix the brain and you fix everything else is, I think, the theology behind it, which makes sense, somewhat. I think, there are disconnects, but it's possible. I'm not really sure though. I think that should be something that's talked about more when we're talking about it. But
Well, there's a lot of hope in that field, it sounds like, and there's already multiple clients I can think of off the top of my head, and not just clients, but everybody and people in the disability community that I feel like will be able to hopefully gain some type of function physically, but also regain some type of hope spiritually and mentally as well
I think so, and I
when
think
all that comes out.
I think that's such a big thing, right?
Yeah.
Having hope that there is something out there, there could be something out there, or even the hope that people are out there trying, right?
Yeah.
I think because it's such a complex problem, a lot of people think like, oh, they're just not really trying. And that is not true. There is so much research that is continuously happening every single year into the field, and people are putting so many hours and so much money into it that the field is progressing. It's not as fast as I think anybody wants, but it is happening. And I did talk about a or drug innervation. I will say the specific one that I was kind of mentioning. It's called NVG-291, and the company who I believe owns like the patent is NerveGen. They hold the world rights to it, and what it is it's a peptide that it doesn't target any type of regeneration from the understanding I have, but it targets the particular sequence of cells that blocks the spinal cord from regenerating when an injury happens. So it's not like, oh, it's not something to try to promote, it's something that's trying to get rid of the thing that is inhibiting the regeneration of the spinal cord. And they've seen from the studies that have come out so far, they've seen a lot of good success. I think most, if not all, of their studies are being ran out of the Mayo Clinic. And it is one of those things that it is very promising, like everything else, but there just has to be more research. And I think if there's a client out there who is hopeful and does, want to try to participate in those things, it's great. There's no guarantee that you're going to get it or that it's going to work or anything like that. They obviously do double blinds and have control groups, but I think just being able to participate and, like you said, have hope is a great thing that kind of gets overlooked.
It's very interesting. Where do you think that somebody can go and do their own research on that topic? What should they type in onto like Google if they want to go do their own research and figure out a little bit more about that?
Literally just typing in NVG-291, and I think NerveGen's website will come up and you can read all about it. And then I think I mentioned it before, but there's this company, and I went to their symposium, or it was a few days of like lectures where they brought on specific scientists in the field of paralysis, and it's called Unite, the number 2, Fight Paralysis. And they are a fantastic resource. They also have a podcast, I think it's called CureCast, where they do similar things, but more into the scientific literature a lot of the times. And they are a great resource because they have a particular like drop down link on their website, and it's called Lab Rats. And what it is you can search all of the studies that are being done for paralysis near you or in a particular region. And I believe you can even search like, oh, I just want to participate in bowel and bladder studies, or I just want to participate in regeneration studies, or blood pressure regulation, or robotics, or implants, or whatever. And it'll bring up most, I can't say all because I'm sure they don't have access to some, but most of the studies that are being done by universities, by hospitals, by organizations near you. And and you can participate in those studies. And a lot of the times you can even get compensated. And if you don't want to be a participant who is a part of the study, a lot of the times those studies look for, I don't want to say, not like ambassadors, but people who give guidance, who can look at the study and say, well, if you're trying to do a study with this many paraplegics or quadriplegics, if you change the location from here to here, it'll be more accessible and you'll have more people come. Or if you do this with the study, people will be more inclined to show up, or whatever it is. And you're helping people who might not look at a study the same way somebody who lives that lifestyle, they look at it in a different way, obviously. So you can be somebody who provides help to those studies if that's a way that they want to help. And that was, again, Unite to Fight Paralysis, and they're a great resource for the community and people who are trying to participate and be a part of those studies, or even just learn about them.
Are you in the retail, restaurant, hospitality, or petroleum industry? Looking for a trusted partner with your multi-site remodel, refresh, or tech integration needs? Look no further. Apex Imaging Services is your complete solution provider. With over 7 decades of experience, we're experts in everything from general contracting to cutting-edge tech solutions. Visit apeximagingservices.com to learn how we can transform your business, increase efficiency, and elevate your brand. Apex Imaging Services. Your vision, our expertise.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Very good to know. Very interesting information, and seems like there is a lot of hope and a lot to come for with those research studies and trials. So, do you feel like you thoroughly enjoy the research component? And if you do, why do you enjoy it?
I absolutely enjoy it. The reasons are, A, I get to continuously learn. We talked about this community, this problem of paralysis is so vast, and we know so much, but we also know so little at the same time. And so I just get to keep learning and learning and learning about where the field is at, where it's going, where it could possibly go, where we thought it was going 10 years ago, but it took a switch and now it's going this complete other direction. And it's just a continuous ability to keep learning, which, coming from our background, is amazing, because that's just kind of what we were taught to do, right? If you are embraced or you're a part of a particular culture, you learn as much as you can about that culture so that you can become a valuable resource to the other people in it. And I think that's a great part of it. And then the second component is, because when I think of a cure to paralysis, yes, there isn't one yet, but I have this philosophy or perspective of, I think about energy, and energy can't be created or destroyed, right? Well, what if we consider the cure to paralysis a form of energy? Can't be created, can't be destroyed. So that would mean that it's already out there. The cure to paralysis is out there somewhere. We just haven't put together the right pieces to be able to come to that solution or find whatever it is, right? You think about the creation or the invention of electricity. You didn't create it, really. It was already out there. We just found a way to harvest it. And that's kind of where I think of when I think of the cure to paralysis. It's out there somewhere. We just got to find a way to put the puzzle pieces together to get to it. And I think that that's so interesting, but so, like you said, hopeful for a lot of ways, or for a lot of people. But it's also like, to me, it feels like it's just right there, right? So I just got to learn one more thing and then we'll be able to find it. Or I can learn 2 more things and then, maybe people will be able to, or not even me, but the community of the individuals who are trying to find a cure for paralysis. Like, it's right there. We're so close.
Yeah.
But we really aren't sure how close we are, because there's just a continual progress of needing to learn more about it.
We're not there yet. It's a growth. That's a growth mindset way of looking at it, because there are so many things that have been invented that once weren't invented, or that once weren't known about, and now that we have all this information about those different things, and I mean,
the internet.
It sounds a lot easier, but what it took was, hundreds to thousands of years of evolution and of becoming better at what we do and researching. And now, like, as technology is getting so much better and AI is getting so much better, I feel like those kinds of things might fall into our lap a little bit easier nowadays.
Exactly.
So that's hopefully the goal. And like you said, it's the cure to paralysis, we hopes is out there somewhere, and with the betterment of research over time, and thanks to what you do and how much you're interested in that, being the director of research here at TPS, I think that you're going to have a very positive and great impact in that field.
That is the hope. I think that's, what all of us want to do and why all of us got into this field, right? We just want to be able to help people and help as many people as possible. And
Yeah.
when I thought of that initially, when I got into the field, I was like, okay, well, I try to just help my one client from 10 to 11, or just help my whole schedule or the whole schedule of TPS. Let's look at it in a very broad sense and try to just cure it all. And that's obviously very audacious and not practical, but it's possible, I think.
It's
So
a seagull,
yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Isn't that your
Definitely.
seagull?
Absolutely it
Yeah.
is.
Can you tell me your seagull?
Cure any and all known forms of paralysis.
I love it.
Simple. Like that's just, I think, where I think the field needs to go, and something I think needs to happen for mankind, right? If we can leave this earth in the position to where we solved this big problem and we left it in a better spot, I think that's what it's all about, right?
A little bit of a backstory on seagulls. It's the letter C, goal, and that comes from thinking into results. Remember that Hal took us through that group, and that was one of the things I feel like that changed my life for the better. And being able to think about a goal that is so, I want to say far-fetched, but it's a goal that hasn't yet been accomplished by yourself, but it's something that you could see yourself doing in a few years, and being able to try to accomplish that goal, whether it be 2 to 3 to 10 years. I think it's great to just have your mind going into that direction, and also sounds repetitive, but having hope that you can once achieve that great goal.
Goal that you don't know how you're gonna get there, you just know that you want to get there.
Exactly. Yeah.
Logan, I've been talking way too much, so
We love hearing it.
why don't you
Keep
tell
talking
everybody
more.
what your favorite part of this job is?
Oh man, where do I start? I think there's so many different parts of this job. That's my favorite. Not only do I get to talk to people every day, and that's something that I feel like I've always liked to do, is I'm a little extroverted, I would say. I like to talk to people. Yeah, at times. Um, I think being able to communicate with people every day, not only in a group setting, but now being able to be one-on-one with somebody, with a client every day, that's one of my favorite parts about this job. But I think more importantly is knowing that when a client leaves the building, that I helped that client in a certain way, whether it be in a physical way, in a mental way, in a spiritual way, in an emotional way, whatever it may be. Hopefully that one of those clients are receiving some sort of benefit, a positive benefit to us when they come to TPS. And that's what I love about this job so much, is that TPS, it gave me the opportunity to be a specialist, and the Perfect Step provided that for me. So being so privileged enough to have a career to where I can go so far into that career, and I can dive all my eggs into this career, right? Because this is something that I chose for a reason, because I love to help people, and I love to try to help people to be the best version of themselves. And I think I mentioned this in the last podcast, part 1 too. But I think, when I'm helping a client, when I'm with a client every day, I don't really see it as me just helping them. I see it as them also helping me, in the sense where I think they're helping me to become the best version of myself too, because there's so many challenges and obstacles that client has overcame already before they even got to TPS. And now that they're at TPS and they're dealing with these secondary complications, like you mentioned earlier, there's so many other challenges and obstacles that they have still yet to overcome. But I think seeing their tenacity in trying to overcome these obstacles and trying to overcome these challenges, and that coincides with my own life too. And it really provides me with a lot of like humbling hope of, man, this person came into the building today and they're not feeling their best. Maybe they're having some sort of physical inhibition to their life right now, but them still being able to show up and give their best and give their 100% effort when they come into the building, I think that's one of my favorite things, because that also gives me an opportunity for me to show up to work and to give my 100% effort every single day too. So without the clients, we wouldn't be here, right? In a perfect world, we would have 0 clients because we're looking for the cure to paralysis, obviously. So if all my clients are like, hey, I don't need to come back to you, that's my goal's achieved. I'm like, great, awesome.
Find a new job.
Yeah, don't come back. You know, we want, the goal is for you to graduate from the program. At the same time, though, there's so many benefits that come with exercise, and where I don't want people to ever stop exercising and never stop moving their body as long as they possibly can. And that's what's so great about, if I can just speak about maybe a previous job that I've had before TPS, and a little bit about how I have trained people that were 18, 17, 18 years old, all the way up until a 90-year-old grandmother deadlifting over 100 pounds off the ground. And those kinds of things were really, really cool to see, in the sense of, man, I hope that's me, or I hope that's my wife one day. I hope that's my mother one day, right? And those kind of things really get me thinking of, that's somebody's grandma, that's somebody's mom. And the fact that I can help to positively impact their lifestyle in that kind of way, it makes me happy. And that's why I do this.
Are you or a loved one living with paralysis and searching for a path to recovery and hope? Look no further than The Perfect Step. Our unique exercise-based recovery programs have helped clients with conditions like spinal cord injury, stroke, Parkinson's, and more. With our approach, many clients experience improved function, reduced medication, and even freedom from wheelchairs. But we're not just a program, we're a community of support. You'll meet peers who understand your journey, along with specialists dedicated to your recovery. Visit us today at theperfectstep.com. The Perfect Step, where recovery begins.
So important. I think, like you said, there's just so many positive benefits to exercise.
Yeah.
Even when somebody hasn't had a neurological injury or diagnosis, that, why wouldn't the people who have also receive a large benefit from doing that and doing those things?
Right.
And I think you hit the nail on the head. When I think of this job and I think about my favorite part, it's the change in perspective on life that I got. Right. It's so hard or so easy to want to complain about the simplest things. We did an exercise in college, and I think about it so often. And it was just a random day in college where we had a class, and the homework for that class was to track, tally, and understand how many times you said a complaint for the rest of the day.
Even if it's in your head, you had
Even in your
to
head,
write down
you
that
wrote it
complaint
down.
on
It
paper.
was 24 hours
Yeah.
from 4:10 p.m. to 4:10 p.m. the very next day.
Yeah.
How many times did you complain? And it's crazy when you actually do it. You're sitting there complaining, why is this guy driving so slow? And it's like, he's just driving the speed limit, you know? He's just doing his own thing. He's got his own life going on. And you start to tally and you understand, like, wow, I complain a lot. And when I got into this job, you have clients who, if anybody has something to probably complain about, it might be one of them. They're dealing with nerve pain, they're dealing with the secondary complication, they're dealing with all these other components. But that wasn't always the case. You get clients who come in here and you say, oh, hey, how's it going? How you doing? And you'll have a client say, oh, nothing to complain about. And it's like, wow.
Mind blowing. Yeah.
I definitely don't have anything to complain about. Like,
Right.
I have it so good. I have such a good life. I'm so blessed, so privileged, all of these things.
Yeah.
And if you can just take a little bit of that from our clients every single day, which our clients are so amazing and they do that for us, they kind of make you do that.
Yeah.
It completely changes your perspective on being grateful for all the little things and
Little things. Yeah. It goes back
just
to
not
that.
complaining about all the other little things that aren't maybe going your way. So
what I liked about the exercise so much was that not only were those complaints of what you were saying in that day verbally, but also what you thought in your head. Like any type of thought of a complaint in your head, you wrote that down on a piece of paper, and it put that into fruition and made you read that complaint and say, wow, that's what I was thinking about today. And I think the next day we all read our sheet out loud to each other. And it was kind of an exercise that kind of like threw you under the bus in a sense, but in the best way possible, where you had some complaints you wrote down, and then you heard the guy next to you, and there are some complaints he wrote down. And not only to see the difference in those complaints, but also to see the difference in how long or short that list was like, man, this person has all these types of things they're dealing with every single day. I'm not alone in what I'm dealing with those things. And I think that coincides with our clients a lot too, because our clients may have like some complaints, right? And by all means, a lot of those complaints are very, very valid, right? But there may be another client that has less or more of those complaints. And I think that's where some people in the building can like empathize with each other in that sense, where they can empathize with, that's what they're going through, this is what I'm going through. And it may not to make someone's case sound more positive or negative than the other person. It's definitely not for that aspect, but it's to see, hey, there's other people that are also going through similar things than what you're going through too. And you guys can maybe help each other with the community here at TPS, being able to, help each other out and just be maybe that leaning shoulder that somebody needs.
Couldn't have said it better. I have one last question for you before we wrap it up. We talked about the good, favorite part. What's the hardest part of this job for you?
Yeah, hardest part outside of this job sometimes being physically taxing. I think I was just talking to this actually about one of the clients yesterday, and their caregivers, because man, I can't complain to caregivers either, because caregivers have it hard physically on their body. I couldn't imagine, especially if you're working with somebody that needs a little bit more. Maybe you need to lift them yourself, or you got to transfer them yourself, and that's got to be a lot on the caregiver's body. I think this job can be difficult physically sometimes because of the lifts that we do and because of us moving someone's body around. But I think that as time goes on and you continue to do this job, you find out ways to do this job smarter. Instead of working so much harder, for me at first, it was hard for me to ask for help a lot. And now I have no problem. Like sometimes I'm going to ask an assistant if I need some help moving somebody around the table or getting him to a certain position, ask for help, right? And that's what I've been telling a lot of new people too. And here's like, don't feel bad to ask for help. Don't be scared to ask for help, because you need that help. It's part of the job, and it's our assistant's job to help us out with those kinds of things too. It's part of their job. They have a very important job what they do here, and without our assistants, man, there wouldn't be specialists. There wouldn't be clients without our assistants. They're the glue that holds us together. But I think that's one of the most difficult parts of this job and aspects is that. But I think also sometimes emotionally being able to go home and wash off your day and then leave work at work and compartmentalize those two different things of work and home. Because when you go home and you go home to your wife, your kids, your parents, whoever it may be, you don't want your emotions to rub off onto their emotions, right? You don't want to rub off onto them. So being able to compartmentalize and understand that it is a career that you chose, it's a job, and um, being able to kind of separate yourself in those aspects, because yeah, like our clients are greatly impacting us positively all the time. But hey, when you hear so many difficult stories, you have to be able to compartmentalize those stories and I guess see it in a positive sense. It's not all sunshines and rainbows all the time, but still try to make that into a positive sense of, man, this is what they're doing for themselves. This is a leap in their recovery, and I'm able to greatly help them out with that. So that's a blessing in itself.
It absolutely is. Ooh,
How about yourself? What's the hardest part of this job that you would say?
I would say the physical part took me a couple of years to get used to, and like you said, once
Yeah.
you learn that asking for help is okay, and you learn how to manipulate the body in particular ways that's more advantageous for
Mm-hmm.
your body and makes it a lot easier.
Yeah.
That part got better, but the emotional part, compartmentalizing, and you do, like you said, hear so many hard, sad stories
Mhm.
that you you don't get numb to them
Yeah.
because they are all so different. You hear all these different stories, and they don't get like any less sad. You
Yeah.
you hear whether it's a younger individual who had an accident, and you know that until a cure comes, like they're going to be dealing with that. Or if it's an older individual who had a full life of living life in a particular way, and now, you have to teach an old dog new tricks.
Hmm.
It is all sad, and like you said, you have to compartmentalize, and you have to go home, and you have to go about your life not trying to think about those things, or like you said, let it rub off on your loved ones, your family,
Yeah.
your parents, friends, whoever it is that you're going to be spending time with.
Yeah.
Because while yes, it is very sad, you're going to go home and those people are going to talk about their day, and they could have had something that they felt was made them sad,
Yeah.
and it might not be the same in the sense of like a dramatic experience, but it doesn't make it any less sad in their own perspective.
Right.
And so it took me a while to understand that, when my friend is dealing with, he was sad that he got stuck in traffic for a couple hours, like that is not the same type of sad, but he's still allowed to feel those emotions. And
Yeah.
I still need to be okay with, letting him talk about that in the idea that it is also sad.
Mm.
It's definitely not the same, but that doesn't invalidate their perspective on what they were experiencing through a particular amount of time. And I think that part took me a good amount of time, because I'm somebody who, I don't convict emotion a lot of the times, keep it all inside. But when you're dealing with other people, they may let those emotions out, and you have to find a way to let them do that in a beneficial way for them, even though you're like, well, how could you be sad about this when, I just listened to all these stories and that was like really sad.
Mm.
It doesn't negate their perspective. And that was something that it took me a while to learn. And I'm still learning, definitely not perfect at it.
Me as well. To this day.
So
Yeah, we'll never stop learning. Yeah.
yeah, cannot.
No, that's yeah. And I think you're a good listener. I think you have a good ear too, and that's what people need sometimes, is just someone to listen. They don't want advice. They don't want you to tell them how to fix the problem. They just want to tell you the problem, and they want you to just be a listener for them. And that took me a little bit of time to learn, but I think
Listening to listen, not to solve the problem.
no, definitely not. And not trying to always be a problem solver. And I think that sometimes as men, sometimes we're like, all right, we
We got the answers.
yeah, we got the answer to that issue.
Don't
We'll
have
help
the
you solve
answers.
it. Like,
We don't have the answers.
no, we don't. And that's the same with our clients. Like, they just want somebody to listen sometimes. And thank goodness that we can be that for them.
Yep, and it's a gradual progression, just like all of it. Still learning. Love my wife. Thank you. Sorry,
Yeah.
getting better at it. But it's just this gradual progression where any of the different facets that we've talked about, you just have to keep learning and understand that there's going to be parts where you fall short, but that's okay, because you're going to learn something from that experience, and
Yeah.
going to come up better on the other side and try to help somebody else with that experience that you've just gone through.
Definitely. Well, Cody, thank you so much. Part 2, we appreciate you being on and sharing all your knowledge, wisdom, and everything that you've been through here at TPS so far. We're excited for the research aspect of everything, but also just what you bring to the table here at TPS.
Thank you, Logan. I think you also have just a great perspective, and all your knowledge is appreciated, and I know people are going to be able to relate and take something away from it. So thanks for coming on.
Appreciate that. Yes, sir. Until next time, stay tuned on Pathways to Healing. Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of Pathways to Healing, the Perfect Step podcast. We hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as we did.
If you found today's episode to be valuable, please remember to like, comment, subscribe, share, and feel free to leave a review by clicking the link in the description below.
If you have any suggestions, feedback, or topics you'd like for us to cover in upcoming episodes, you can go to our website under the tab Pathways to Healing and fill out the form.
We'll be back in a couple of weeks with another engaging conversation giving insight into the paralysis community.
Until then, keep inspiring, stay resilient, and roll on.
These are your hosts, Cody Norman
and Logan Frye,
signing off.